What if hell isn't fire and brimstone? What if it isn't even punishment? What if hell is just waiting forever in a library so vast it breaks mathematics, searching for one book that might never be found? 2 novellas, read back to back, and I genuinely haven't been able to think straight since. Today we're going somewhere dark, really dark, to talk about A Short Stay in Hell and Tender is the Flesh. 2 books that, together, form the most unsettling argument about human dignity I've ever encountered. A Short Stay in Hell was written by Stephen L. Peck, a biologist and philosopher at Brigham Young University, which, yes, makes this book even more fascinating. Published in 2012, it's barely 100 pages. You could read it in an afternoon, but the concept will haunt you for weeks. Peck is a practicing Mormon, and this novella grows directly from that cosmology, but don't let that put you off. Atheists especially take note. Then there's Tender is the Flesh, by Argentine author Agustina Basterrica, published in 2017, translated into English in 2020, arriving right in the middle of a pandemic, when the world was already deeply uncomfortable. It asks a question we'd rather not answer. How does a society normalize atrocity? How do we make the unthinkable feel routine? Basterrica writes with surgical precision, clinical, cold, and devastatingly effective. These 2 books seem like they shouldn't belong together. One is metaphysical horror rooted in theology. The other is dystopian fiction rooted in capitalism and political history. But read them back to back, and something clicks, a shared argument about what happens when the structures that protect human meaning collapse. Let's dig in. A Short Stay in Hell opens with a premise that is, on its face, almost mundane. The protagonist, a Mormon man, dies and discovers the afterlife is governed not by his faith, but by Zoroastrianism, which means he's in hell. Not because he was evil, just because he believed the wrong thing, and the hell he's sent to isn't torture, it's a library. Specifically, it's Borges' Library of Babel, a library containing every possible book that could ever be written. Every combination of every letter, in every language, in every order. Somewhere in this library is a book that contains a complete and accurate description of your life. Find that book, and you go to heaven, except the library is infinite. Truly, mathematically infinite. The odds of finding your book are so astronomically small they essentially do not exist. This is the hell, not fire, not pain, just an eternity of searching for something that feels unreachable. What Peck does brilliantly is show us how people respond. Some go mad, some form communities, some find meaning in the searching itself, even knowing it's probably futile. Sound familiar? It should, because this is just life. Stripped of its comforting narratives, what Peck is describing is the human condition, an infinite sea of possibility, and us, desperately trying to find the one thing that confirms our existence mattered. Now, Tender is the Flesh, and I want to be upfront. This book contains graphic descriptions of human bodies being processed like livestock. If that's not for you, I understand. But the reason Basterrica goes there is because she's making an argument that requires visceral discomfort to land. The premise: a virus has wiped out all animal life. Facing a protein crisis, humanity has turned to eating people. But here's the twist: they never call it that. The humans raised for consumption are called special meat. They're given numbers, not names. The industry has built an entire vocabulary, bureaucratic, sanitary, efficient, specifically designed to make what's happening not feel like what it is, and Basterrica writes in the same voice. Clinical, matter of fact. The horror isn't the gore, it's the normalization. It's the way our narrator, Marcos, processes everything through industry language. He's competent at his job. He goes home after. The genius and the brutality is how Basterrica implicates the reader. We follow Marcos. We see through his eyes, we understand his logic, and somewhere around the halfway point, we realize we've been nodding along. We've accepted the premise. We've started using the language too. The book is, on one level, a meditation on the meat industry and how we've already done this to animals, wrapped atrocity in language clean enough to sell at a supermarket. But it goes deeper. By the end, Marcos does something that the reader experiences as a deep personal betrayal. I won't spoil it exactly, but what Basterrica is doing is completing her argument. There is no outside. There is no observer who is separate from the system. The narrator who guided us through the horror is not our guide out of it. He's inside it. And by extension, so are we. That final revelation reframes everything. The clinical tone wasn't distance, it was complicity all along. Here's where these 2 books start speaking to each other. In A Short Stay in Hell, the horror is cosmic meaninglessness, an eternity where your existence is a statistically insignificant blip in an indifferent universe. In Tender is the Flesh, the horror is engineered meaninglessness, a society that has deliberately stripped meaning from certain lives to use them as resources. One is metaphysical, one is political, but both ask the same question. What remains of a person when the structure that granted them dignity is removed? Think about the systems we rely on to maintain the illusion that things are meaningful: religion, law, language, social roles. Both of these books dismantle one of those systems and watch what happens. Peck removes the promise of a meaningful afterlife, reveals it to be as indifferent as a card catalog. Basterica removes legal and linguistic protection from human beings and shows how quickly everything else follows. In both cases, you're left with the same thing: a person, alone, in a structure that doesn't care about them. And this connects to right now. We're surrounded by systems that produce language specifically designed to obscure what's actually happening in politics, in supply chains, in the way we discuss AI displacement, in the way we talk about war. Collateral damage, workforce restructuring, special meat. The euphemism is not just a symptom of the problem. Basterica is arguing that the euphemism is the engine. It doesn't describe the system, it enables it. If Tender is the Flesh hit you, I'd point you toward Kazuo Ishiguro's Never Let Me Go, which performs a nearly identical trick, a narrator so embedded in a dehumanizing system that their very calmness is the horror. And for A Short Stay in Hell's cosmic dread, read Borges directly. The Library of Babel is 20 pages. It will hollow you out in the best possible way. Both are worth your time, and both rhyme with what we've been talking about here. Here's the thing I bet you didn't know about A Short Stay in Hell. Peck didn't write it as a horror story. He wrote it as a philosophical thought experiment about infinity, specifically inspired by his work as a biologist thinking about deep time and the incomprehensible scale of evolutionary history. The dread isn't an accident, but it's not the point. The point is that infinity is genuinely inconceivable. Our brains cannot process it. Peck wanted a narrative that forced us to feel that failure, not just understand it intellectually. And here's something that reframes Tender is the Flesh entirely. Basterica has said in interviews that she wrote this book in the context of Argentina's own history of state-sanctioned disappearances, the dirty war of the 1970s, during which tens of thousands of people were disappeared by the government. The word itself, desaparecidos, the disappeared, is a masterpiece of linguistic horror. Basterica's book is not just about meat. It's about what it means when a state decides some people don't count as people, and then builds a vocabulary to make that feel normal. That context reframes Marcos completely. When he processes special meat through clinical vocabulary, he's not just a dystopian character, he's a portrait of ordinary complicity. He's the bureaucrat. He's the person who fills out the forms and goes home to dinner. He's every functionary and every atrocity who maintained the system by never questioning the language. And Basterica is asking, what separates you from him? When have you accepted the clean word for the dirty thing? So what do we do with all this? Here's what I think these books are together. They're an invitation to notice the structures. A Short Stay in Hell asks you to sit with the fact that the cosmos does not confirm your significance, and then to notice what you do with that. Peck's protagonist, by the end, has been changed in ways that feel genuinely transcendent, even in the bleakest possible setting. The searching itself becomes the meaning. And Tender is the Flesh asks you to audit your language. Where are you using clean words for dirty things? Where have you accepted a euphemism that, translated honestly, would require you to act differently? These aren't comfortable questions. Basterica isn't writing a polemic, she's writing a mirror. The horror of that final betrayal is really the book asking, were you expecting to be exempt? Why exactly did you think you were watching and not participating? Read together, these two books form one complete argument. The universe doesn't grant us significance automatically, and the systems we've built to grant each other significance are fragile, linguistic, and contingent. They can be dismantled. They have been dismantled. What these books ask of us is to be awake to that, to take seriously the dignity we extend, and to notice, honestly, where we've quietly stopped extending it. That's not a comfortable message, but it's an important one, and it's exactly why literature like this matters. If this conversation changed how you think about either of these books, I think you'll love our deep dive on Never Let Me Go. Another story where a narrator's calm acceptance of the horrific is itself the point. Or if the cosmic dread of a short stay in hell is what got under your skin, we've done a full episode on Borges and the Library of Babel that I think will genuinely expand your brain. Both are linked in the description. And if you've read either of these, especially back-to-back, drop a comment. Tell me which one broke you first. I want to know I'm not alone.